So in this video, I'm going to talk about some of the things you should know as an international tourist visiting this place. The first one you should know is extremely loud. So although this is India, it is a territory of India. I've not spent too much time on mainland India, so it's hard for me to compare. I can only go off what people tell me and things like that. This is quite different from being a tourist in mainland India in many ways. The way it's always explained to me is here on the Andamans, you get all the good of India with none of the bad. You don't really get the sense of danger feeling, like crime is incredibly low here on the islands. You don't really have that threat of being robbed or having to watch your pockets a lot, which from stories I've heard, when you're in cities in the mainland, then those safety concerns have to be at the front of your mind, but not so much when you're here. But as an international tourist here on Andaman, there is some things that you should know. And the first one I want to talk about is being connected. I always like to get a domestic SIM card. It's good to be connected even when you're out and about. Getting a SIM card here, it's possible, it's complicated. So in some countries, obtaining a SIM card is really quite easy, especially like my country in the UK. There's only few places you can really get a SIM card from. They're like officially recognized sellers. So especially if you're going to be in Port Blair, the main place to go to is the actual office of the company of the network themselves. Now I've tried to get a few different SIM cards from a few different operators and faced different problems. So the first one, BSNL, and trying to get a pay-as-you-go or what they call a prepay SIM card from them is possible. However, when you go to their office, you have to be accompanied by a local, someone who's registered on the island. They don't have to use that provider themselves. There just has to be an ID provided with a local address and somebody who is registered in this actual place, which as a tourist may not always be the case. So the operator I use, it's a company called Airtel. Now again, you have to go to the office and you have to provide your passport, which is kind of normal, but also you have to provide all your visa documents. And the reason why that is, your SIM card will only be in use for the amount of time that your visa exists for. If you're here on a 30-day visa, your SIM card will only be operational for 30 days. Now, the only difficulty in getting this SIM card is you don't need to have anybody present, but what you do need is an Indian number. So they can send codes to your phone for the setup, but those codes have to be sent to an already existing Indian number, which can be difficult as a tourist if you don't know anyone here. They don't have to be present, so if you know somebody in a completely different part of India, as long as you can be in contact with them at that time, it is possible, because all they have to do is let you know a specific code. So for that, passport, visa documents, and a pre-existing Indian SIM card. So another thing for tourists to note, and it's quite fitting as I'm going to talk about this as I'm passing the jetty, there's a few different ways to ride from island to island here. So if you're going to ride the government ferry, you can only purchase tickets days before, and I would even say try and do it more than one day before. The least amount of time you can do it is just one day. However, I've known from my own experience and friends' experience, if you go one day before, chances are you may not get a ticket. There's only a certain amount of tickets that are put aside for tourists, and otherwise the majority of tickets are actually kept for islanders. The government ferry will cost you about 650 rupees, which is about £6.50 in UK pounds. You also have the option to ride private ferries. The private ferries cost a little bit more. They cost about 1,500 rupees, which is around £15. So another thing I want to talk about is the tuk-tuks. As an international tourist, if you're just walking, they're going to pull up and try and get you in. A friend told me it never happens to them. It more only happens to international tourists, but they always want to pull up and try and get you in. You have to just politely decline, but it's going to happen a lot. My advice, always agree on a price beforehand, and if they say a price and you're happy with that, go for it. And if you're not, just move on to the next one, because if you've got a price in your head that you know's fair, I guarantee you maybe after asking 2 or 3 tuk-tuks, you'll definitely get that price to your destination. Keeping it on the sense of transport and travel, advice that I would give to international tourists being in Port Blair, certainly for the first time, is use the buses. The bus network is incredibly good here. Buses go absolutely everywhere, and they're really quite regular, and they're extremely cheap. I must admit, at the beginning, I was a bit put off and scared by using the buses. Sometimes the way you have to jump on them and jump off them, it's like drawing in motion, but you kind of get used to it. Ride the buses. They work as an extremely good price. They're very accessible, and you can get all over the place with them, and it's never going to cost you more than like 30 rupees. The only thing you get with that is you'll have a lot of people staring at you as if like, why on earth is this tourist getting on the bus? But that brings me on to my next point. Maybe because tourism is only really starting to grow here on the Andamans, especially Western international tourists, but you're going to get looked at a lot. It's not like you get stared at a lot, but I wouldn't say it's in an evil or a callous kind of manner. It's more just out of intrigue. Maybe some of these people have never seen Western tourists, and especially in some of the parts of the city that I end up in, like I will literally walk past people and they will stop and just stare at me with just the blank look on the face like, who on earth is this? Get used to it. It's not malicious. It's nothing to be scared of. It can be off-putting at the beginning. It was quite off-putting for me at the beginning. It's just, they're just curious, and a lot of the time they probably don't have the level of English to be able to speak to you and ask you about where you're from, what you're doing here, but they're just really intrigued that they're seeing an international foreign tourist. And also be ready to take selfies with locals. They're gonna ask you. It's, again, it comes down to the fact of intrigue. They're just very intrigued and interested as the fact that you're in their place, and it's something that's only recently growing. Tourism in India has been a huge thing in many places for a long time, but here on the Andamans it's still quite young. So just be ready to be seen as a bit of an intrigue character, and you're going to get asked for selfies, and my advice is take the selfie with them. And another tip for people visiting here for the first time, and I believe this applies all over India, if you're buying any object from a shop, absolutely anything, any form of product, that product will display something called an MRP. So that's an indicator of the maximum price that the item can be sold to you. So if you can check the MRP before you actually go to the till, then you'll know whether they're trying to overcharge you or not. And on the Andamans, it rarely happens. It's happened on a couple of occasions, but if you're aware of this, you can just say to them, no, the MRP is this price, and then they'll have to reduce it to that. But do check on any form of items that consist of liquid. Sometimes the MRP is per litre. So if you pick up, let's say, a bottle of fruity, if the MRP says 50 rupees per litre and the item is 2 litres, then it means it's going to be 100 rupees. If you are an international tourist and you do plan on coming to the Andamans, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments if you are, or if you're somebody that's already been to this place, let me know about your experiences from coming to the Andaman Islands, because I absolutely love this place. The sun has fully set now, and it is time for me to get something to eat. So like usual, if you enjoy this content, if you enjoy this travel content, make sure you like, subscribe, and give this video a share as well. And I'll see you on the next one.